Welcome to Despicable Maine Deep Dive. Okay, let's get right into it today because this is something, well, it should really grab your attention. We're talking about how Maine's state government has paid the marketing division of the Bangor Daily News, that's Bangor Publishing Company, over, get this, $2.4 million since Governor Mills took office back in 2019.
Yeah, $2.4 million. That's a significant chunk of change flowing from the state to essentially the state's biggest news organization group.
Exactly. And today, we're really zeroing in on one specific contract. It was awarded late 2021, worth almost $400,000.
Right. And our mission here is really to unpack this for you. We want to look at whether this is just, standard government procedure for informing the public.
Or if it starts to feel like something else. Like, is your taxpayer money being used, maybe subtly, maybe not so subtly, to shape the news you get?
That's the core question. And we've got the documents, the procurement justification form, the PJF, the actual signed contract, the whole deal.
We got the paperwork.
We do. And it circles back to that central point. When the government funds a subsidiary of a major news outlet for a big campaign, well, where's that line between necessary public information and maybe state-sponsored messaging? Or even propaganda, some might argue.
Okay, let's dig into this specific contract then. $395,900. The PJF, the justification form, it says this money was for a, quote, targeted recruitment effort designed to bolster the recruitment of workers into direct care entry-level employment.
So basically, getting more people into jobs like CNAs, home health aides, those essential frontline healthcare roles.
Yeah, roles that are definitely needed.
Definitely. And the state's reasoning continues that the campaign was meant to, and again, I'm quoting here, promote the value importance of the profession as well as generate interest in this field as a foot in the door.
To an industry with significant growth opportunities.
Yeah.
So sell the job, sell the career path.
Exactly. Make it look attractive. Highlight the positives. Get people interested.
And this wasn't just like a few posters. The plan outlined in the documents was pretty extensive.
Oh, yeah. They talked about a dedicated website, a big social media strategy, using traditional paid advertising, but also what they call earned media.
Right. That's like getting news stories placed, press releases.
Right.
Stuff you don't directly pay the outlet for, but you're still trying to generate coverage.
Precisely. Plus branded materials, flyers, swag, that kind of thing, and even outreach events.
Well, it's a full court press, really. And the money for this, it came from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA.
Yeah, federal pandemic relief funds funneled through the state's main jobs and recovery plan. The approvals, the sign-offs from state officials, they're all right there on the PJF document. Kimberly Smith signed off, Kathy Paquette from procurement. It went through channels.
Which is important context. This was federal money intended for specific recovery efforts.
Right. And the state argued that tackling these healthcare worker shortages, which the pandemic definitely made worse, fit the bill for using those ARPA funds.
Okay, so that's the what and the why from the state's perspective. Now, how did Pulse Marketing Agency, the Bangor Publishing Company subsidiary, actually get this contract?
Well, according to the documents, it was through a competitive mini-bid process. They used something called a PQVL.
A pre-qualified vendor list.
Exactly. It's a way for the state to have a pool of already vetted companies for certain types of work. Pulse was on that list.
And so they bid against other pre-qualified agencies, presumably.
That's the idea. And when the state evaluated the bids, Pulse apparently came out on top based heavily on two main things: cost and the quality of their proposed services.
Okay, cost is usually a big factor in government contracts.
A huge factor. And the justification explicitly states Pulse earned full points for cost. They were the cheapest.
Which, makes you wonder, does being part of a larger media company, maybe sharing overhead or resources, give them an edge to underbid standalone agencies? Just a thought.
It's a fair question to raise. And beyond just cost, their proposal itself scored really high. The evaluation notes called it very thorough and custom.
Custom how?
Well, they liked how Pulse apparently made a strong connection between direct care as entry-level job as a starting point to a healthcare career. They also liked that Pulse included specific TARD metrics, ways to measure if the campaign was actually working.
Okay, so measurable results. That's good.
Yeah, and they showed case studies of past work, highlighted their digital and social media skills, mentioned using innovative platforms. They seemed to, tick all the required boxes on paper.
So, lowest cost, highly rated proposal. The state even formally noted the rates were reasonable and consistent with other agreements. So it's pretty standard, right?
On the surface, yes, it follows the procurement playbook. But then you hit that sticking point again.
That Pulse marketing agency is owned by the same company that owns the Bangor Daily News.
Exactly. And that connection, that's where it gets complicated. Or at least where the perception gets complicated.
Right. So this marketing campaign, it wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was part of a larger state effort, wasn't it?
Correct. It plugged into something called the Healthcare Career Navigators Initiative. The marketing was sort of the recruitment drive to feed into this bigger program.
And that initiative was also about the workforce shortage.
Yes, directly tackling those shortages, especially the ones really highlighted by COVID. The core of that initiative was creating 2 specific temporary jobs.
Okay.
Career Center consultant positions, funded through, looks like, late 2024. Their whole job was basically to be guides.
Guides for people wanting healthcare jobs.
Pretty much. Helping people understand healthcare careers, how credentials stack up, figuring out credits for prior learning. And a big piece was helping out-of-state or foreign-trained healthcare workers get their licenses recognized here in Maine.
That seems like a useful service, especially the foreign-trained part, which can be really complex.
For sure. And these navigators were meant to work with anyone interested, people exploring careers, people already working in healthcare, looking to advance. And there was a specific focus on prioritizing help for communities of color and immigrants, groups that often hit extra hurdles with credentialing.
And DHHS and the Department of Labor were involved in this navigator part.
Yeah, they were partners. Now, the funding for those 2 navigator positions themselves, that was separate, about $600,000 in ARPA money, specifically for hiring and training them.
Okay. So the almost $400,000 contract we're focused on, the one Pulse got, that was just to the marketing campaign.
Correct. Purely for the advertising and promotion side, to get people interested enough in direct care jobs that they might then connect with one of these navigators, generate the leads, essentially.
Got it. So let's look closer at what Pulse actually said they'd do for that nearly $400K.
Okay. Well, their proposal really emphasized that they understood the urgency. They knew the state needed to boost interest, like, yesterday.
And their plan was?
Comprehensive. I mean, they proposed covering basically all the bases. Digital, print, traditional media, earned media, the works.
Like what specifically?
Let's see. They talked about brand development, designing a logo, setting brand guidelines. Video production was a big piece, filming testimonials with diverse people who'd started in direct care.
Okay, human stories.
Yeah. They also proposed designing and developing a landing page, a specific web page, but hosted on the official Maine.gov site.
Interesting. Integrated right into the state's official online presence.
Right. Then there was ongoing project management, technical assistance, standard stuff, but then the outreach. Creating social media content, managing the accounts, designing print materials like posters, rack cards, flyers, print ads.
So physical stuff too, not just online.
Both. Designing digital ads for various platforms, running the actual digital marketing strategy, meaning buying the ad space online on social media.
And traditional media.
Yep. They included buying spots on broadcast TV as well.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
So that $395,000 under $900 covered a lot of different activities.
It did. The proposal had a detailed breakdown of the costs. But here's where it gets really, really interesting, going back to that connection.
The BDN connection.
Yes. In their own proposal to the state, Pulse specifically highlighted its connection to the Bangor Daily News.
They brought it up themselves.
Explicitly, they framed it as an advantage. They suggested that being part of BDN gave them unique insights into employment issues in Maine, a better handle on community barriers.
Wait, so they argued their link to the news org made them a better choice for the state contract.
That seems to be the implication. They even mentioned it gave them better access to community leaders, potentially for finding people to feature in those testimonial videos.
That's bold.
It is. They're essentially leveraging their affiliation with the news outlet as a selling point for a government marketing contract. They also pointed to past work with Bangor Public Health as proof they knew how to handle public health messaging.
Okay, so let's pause here. We've got the state paying the marketing firm, owned by the state's biggest newspaper group, nearly $400K for a recruitment campaign. And that firm uses its connection to the newspaper as a selling point.
That's the situation.
It kind of makes you think, is this like the government writing its own positive reviews, in a way? They're funding the marketing arm of a news company to promote a government initiative. It feels a bit circular.
That analogy definitely gets at the potential perception issue. It raises questions about whether the public might see this as the state paying for favorable framing, even if the campaign is just about recruitment. Like you said, if a restaurant paid a food critic's side business.
You'd raise an eyebrow at the five-star review.
Yeah.
Right. Even if the critic swears they kept the businesses separate.
Exactly. The appearance matters, even if the BDN newsroom operates with complete independence from Pulse marketing. And they'd likely argue strongly that it does this financial tie under the same corporate roof, creates, at minimum, a perception problem.
Or, how about this? It's like a major sports team paying an ad agency that happens to be owned by the same parent company as the TV network that broadcasts all their games.
Ooh, that's a good one, too.
The commentators on the network might insist they call the game fairly, but there's this big financial relationship in the background involving the team, the ad agency, and the network owner. Here, it's the state, the marketing agency, and the news publisher.
That comparison really highlights how these financial ties can blur lines, or at least appear to blur lines, in the public's view. It makes you wonder if news coverage related to this initiative, or maybe even state government workforce issues in general, might be viewed differently by readers who are aware of this deal.
And look, if the only goal was truly just recruitment for these vital jobs, was choosing a vendor so closely tied to the state's dominant newspaper the most objective way to do it?
Well, they did run that competitive bid process.
I know, but the state controls who's on that pre-qualified list in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they set the scoring criteria. Couldn't they have picked a totally independent firm with zero media ties?
Theoretically, yes. While the bid process suggests they were looking for value, the choice of this specific vendor, given its unique media affiliation, inevitably invites scrutiny about optics and potential, even if unintended, influence.
It almost feels, doesn't it, like the state government kind of has its own dedicated ad agency nestled inside a major news organization.
That's a provocative way to put it, but it captures the essence of the concern.
A direct pipeline funded by taxpayers, potentially shaping the narrative around what the state's doing.
And while everyone agrees that addressing the direct care worker shortage is crucial for Maine,
Absolutely critical.
the method chosen here, specifically this financial relationship between the state and a news publisher's subsidiary, is something that you, the public, really need to think carefully about.
So wrapping this up, what have we unearthed in this deep dive? We've seen a pretty hefty contract, part of millions flowing from the state to the BDN's parent company, specifically for a marketing campaign run by their subsidiary.
And this setup naturally leads to some tough questions for you to ponder. Does this financial connection create a risk, real or perceived, of influencing the news you rely on about your state government?
Is it just a practical, necessary way to tackle a workforce crisis using available federal funds? Or could it be seen as the state using public money to guarantee positive messaging through established, trusted media channels?
There aren't easy answers here, but it underscores the importance of always thinking critically about your information sources. Consider the potential implications when government marketing campaigns and major news organizations become financially intertwined.
Yeah, really be aware of who's funding what and how that might shape the story.
And maybe ask yourself, even if the intentions are good today, what precedent does this set for the future relationship between government and the press in Maine?
Something to definitely keep thinking about. Thanks for tuning in to the Despicable Maine Deep Dive.